And I'm going to ask, there's a few more up front. If anyone's comfortable just moving up, I would really appreciate it. But if not, sit where you're comfortable. Thank you. For those that don't know me, I'm Abby Kamen. I'm very proud to be your council member in District C. I'm also your neighbor. Come on in. I'm going to do a few quick announcements and run through, because we are here because of the derecho and Hurricane Beryl. So I'm going to give a very brief overview of work that my office has been doing in partnership with your civic groups and organizations. And then I'm going to hand it over to Barry from Trees for Houston, who is just an outstanding partner. But I do want to also recognize we have a lot of neighborhood leaders here, but we wanted to come into the neighborhoods in partnership with our super neighborhoods, our civic clubs, the Heights Association, and big thanks to them for letting us host here at the fire station tonight. Everything we do because of the work of your civic leaders. So if you're not engaged in your civic club, most of you are, but I really encourage you all to engage that way as well because of the work that your neighborhood associations are doing. So I just want to do that quick plug. And also thank you to Super Neighborhood 22. I think it was their actual Super Neighborhood meeting tonight, and they canceled to let folks come here. I want to say a few things about trees. For those of you that haven't seen the recent reports that come out, even before the derecho in April, the Kinder Institute said that between 2011 and 2021, Harris County lost roughly 10% of its tree coverage. And again, I say that was before the derecho. We had 2 back-to-back years of drought with no severe storms. And we were relieved that we didn't have the storms, but the droughts had a huge impact on the health of our trees as well, and made what we're seeing are stronger and more unprecedented storms that much more damaging. I do want to also say, then we get the double whammy, especially in this area. So for the northern part of the district, all the way through Garden Oaks Oak Forest, Shepherd Forest, we had the derecho, and many of you went through this. I was hiding. I put my 3-year-old under the staircase in the middle of it, and I'm sorry for anyone that went through that as well. We had the derecho, then we had Hurricane Beryl, and with Beryl, Texas A&M Forest Service has estimated that Beryl's winds affected 50% of our city's urban trees, half of them. So we go back and we think about 2011 and the drought, plus this, and we know that we really have to be tackling this issue aggressively and taking on the responsibility individually. So I appreciate that each one of you are here, and my ask tonight is that whatever information you are getting, you help share out to others and encourage other neighbors to learn about the same. As many of you know, our tree canopy is critical for drainage, air quality, and shade. We have lost a lot of trees from extreme weather and climate change, but I want to add that the Texas legislature has also preempted the city on many, many fronts in addressing this. For example, we're talking about trees tonight, so I'll keep it to that. The city of Houston is preempted from regulating vegetation within the city of Houston. We're not allowed to regulate any of it. But that doesn't mean that we can't make a difference, and that's where you all come in. So I do want to, I said I would jump into a little bit of hurricane-related information. We address as an office, so we represent nearly 250,000 people with a staff of 4. And some of our staff is here today. Anna, say hi. Hi. Cole, say hi. And despite being impacted personally by these storms, our team was working 24/7 to assist as many people as possible. So even as Anna is relatively new to Houston, this was her first hurricane season, and I got a call that said, "Council member, I'm gonna have to pause work for a few hours, but I've got it covered, someone else is covering it." I said, "Anna, what's going on?" She said, "The water's about to come into my apartment." She wasn't focused on her, she was making sure that someone else was covering her work and assisting residents. So the dedication is absolutely incredible from the C team. The challenge with what we're seeing with all of these storms is the fact that, in my opinion, these are man-made disasters, made worse by whether it's neglect, whether it's willful negligence or not, but these were absolutely avoidable to a certain extent. Even before the storms, our office was partnering in Garden Oaks and Oak Forest, Shepherd Forest, and Shady Acres, setting up meetings with CenterPoint, saying we are experiencing way too many power outages, and we are very concerned. That was before these storms. They knew that this was coming. I encourage everybody to go to a new Space City weather article that just came out yesterday, and I'll quote really quickly from it. A region with a competent electricity distribution system should not have experienced such widespread outages. The new data that's come out from the National Weather Service supports this view. The highest sustained winds across the vast majority of the Houston area were approximately 40 to 60 miles per hour. We had some stronger gusts, but sustained winds was 40 to 60. Ike had sustained winds of 75 miles per hour. So what has been done in the past 16 years? Again, this was more man-made. To me, this felt like Winter Storm Uri, and the state is continuing to fail to keep the lights on, and residents like you and me should not have to be paying the cost of storms, including the cost of generators. How many of you have installed a generator? You got one? A few in the back. They're expensive, and that's what residents are having to resort to now because we can't rely on our power. Again, there are decades of state preemption laws that have gone into this. Again, I said I wouldn't go into the details of as it relates to utilities, but I'm happy to deep dive into that with your civic clubs and super neighborhoods if that's of interest to you. So with that in mind, I do want to say we as a district are preparing for storms. We have a contract with the city, with the Houston Tool Bank. They have been an incredible partner. We have locations prepared to stage prior to a disaster with mucking tools, several generators for critical needs, other things that you may need to respond to a disaster. But the challenge is when those facilities that have been designated can't get the lights back on, we can't open them. And that's what happened this last time. That didn't stop us. We did work with senior centers, checking in on residents in the Heights, especially because we have some problem senior centers that have been very, very neglectful. But also in Garden Oaks, Oak Forest, and around the district. We installed AC units with those generators. We did water distributions, supplies, and if you haven't signed up for our alerts as a district, there's a QR code at the front table where you can just scan to sign up. But especially in an emergency, we are sending multiple times a day alerts and additional information out with resources. And on our website, we keep an active spreadsheet of all the resources we're getting, whether it's from nonprofits, whether it's a group doing something. We try to consolidate it because information is coming from everywhere, and we know it's a lot. I also want to say that debris pickup is taking way too long. That is not acceptable, and I have been raising this issue with the administration. The updates I have as of today are that the first pass of debris pickup started on July 9th. That's related to Beryl, and that was the same day that the second pass from the derecho was supposed to start. They're supposed to complete the first round by Saturday, August 31st. Then they will start the second round for the entire city starting Monday, September 2nd. So Solid Waste is asking that all debris be put to the curb no later than Sunday, August 25th to ensure that it's collected on the second pass. We are escalating issues where somebody had a missed pickup, they didn't get to their street, but all the others were picked up, things of that nature, but you do not, for these pickups, need to report to 311 that you still have debris on your curb unless you think there's an issue. Because we're in the middle of hurricane season, please help other neighbors and remind them with your debris. And I live in Shady Acres, so it's ditches all over the place, and there's a lot of debris that's blocking our ditch flow now and drain. So if you all can please help remind others that we have a lot of debris, but we need to clear as much of it as possible away to allow water to flow through drainage systems. Other than that, on debris, there is a map. It's not a very good map, but there is a map showing who's had their first pass, who hasn't, and that is, we'll share out that link, because it's too hard to read the link out loud. But we will share that out, and I think Anna, is it on our website as well on the resource page?
Yes, it is.
Okay, great. Lastly, the last thing I'll say about this was a wind event. Both the derecho and Beryl were more so wind events. Beryl was not so much a rain event. Yes, it flooded a little bit, but we did not see the structural damage that can happen in a larger storm or a storm that just sits over Houston like Harvey did. Every storm is different. I continue to advocate that we need to move on shovel-ready projects to get infrastructure going to improve flood mitigation in all of our neighborhoods. We are on borrowed time. We know that the infrastructure projects we have completed are working. I've been using the example in the southern part of the district. We had Project Braze, which is completed. We added in the Meyer Grove Detention Basin with the help of Congresswoman Fletcher. It's not even complete, but it held water, and that kept homes from flooding. And then we're doing drainage projects, again, also not complete, but in the area, that helped retain water as well. But we need so much more of that. I have been, for those of you that have worked with me over the years know, I continue to sound the alarm that we are not ready for the big one. And I will do everything I can in my power to move these projects forward, but your voice is absolutely critical in this as well. So please continue to engage with our office, but also speak up about the importance of these investments, because we really needed them yesterday. So now back to trees. I mentioned earlier how, and you all know this, how imperative trees are to our drainage system, to our temperature and climate mitigation, to air quality, the list goes on, and we just love our trees. We do, and District C has been such a proud champion in all of your neighborhoods as a collective to advocate for trees. Barry Ward from Trees for Houston, I approached him and said, we're getting a lot of questions about trees, and Trees for Houston has been doing, Barry, an incredible job going out into the community to help where they can, but as you can imagine, they are getting inundated now. So our hope is that, again, Barry, by consolidating and working with other neighborhoods, we can help get the information out, but you all do such important work that will help us not only preserve what tree canopy we have left, but continue to grow it in a responsible way so that it lasts for generations. So with that, if you do think of a question that you have for Barry, there are cards up front that you can write them on, and our staff will be going through them. And I also wanted to say, I just got a ping, going back to Centerpoint for a second. They are going to do, and I'll explain why I'm laughing. They're going to do several community open houses in Harris County. They just announced this today. There will be 5 total in Harris County. There is 1 in District C. It's going to be held at the West Gray Multi-Service Center on Saturday, August 24th from 10 to 1 p.m. You can go to their website for more information, but this is basically so that you can go speak to someone and voice your concerns, share your opinions, and ask Centerpoint directly questions. But I will say I personally and directly to the CEO did ask when we're going to see a discount on all of our residents' bills for the costs that they have incurred. So we'll see what they do with that one. But with that, Barry, thank you so much. It is an absolute privilege. If y'all haven't seen their new facility, please go visit. People can come visit, right?
Yeah.
Okay, it's beautiful. And
A quick one for you.
Yeah.
It's exactly, couldn't agree more everything you said about trees and how many we've lost. But to that point, there is a fear, and we're starting to see already, that the mitigation to prevent another barrel is let's just cut them all down and chop them all off. And so, I want to hear exactly about Trees for Houston, but is there anything you can say about about City Council in Houston that we're thinking about communicating with CenterPoint not to do that, not to be overreactive, to just cut them all?
I've expressed my personal concerns about that. I've also inquired as to what the city, through the mayor's office, is specifically doing to advocate on behalf of the city. If I get an answer back, I will absolutely let you know. But that's one of the reasons that I approached Barry about doing this, is I don't want us to see a knee-jerk reaction. We have to do this responsibly, and we have to protect our homes. We have to protect utility lines, but we also need to make sure that we're protecting the tree canopy as well. So all of it goes hand in hand, and you're absolutely right. We need to be very thoughtful in how we do this and how we think about forestry is changing because of climate change. Barry, I know you'll go into that, so I don't want to steal the show, but even the trees that used to be native to Houston, so to speak, because of climate change, that's changing too. So all of this is something that Trees for Houston can discuss with us. And Stacy, I thanked y'all earlier for allowing us to kind of take over y'all's night as a super neighborhood to do this.
Absolutely.
All right?
No problem. I'm sorry I'm late.
Thanks, Barry.
So, thank you all for coming. Thanks for indulging me. After Ike in 2008, I think Ike was maybe September 2008, something like that. I started this job in January of 2008. So it was a trial by fire. And there are a lot of analogs between this event and our barrel and the derecho and the Ike event. But there are a lot of things that are different as well. So I'm hoping, as the council member wisely says, to avoid a knee-jerk reaction. But there's an opportunity here to do better, to plant better, to care for better, and to think about what we plant. So Trees for Houston, for those of you who don't know, is a nonprofit. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. We are we are not tax dollar based. We don't use any tax dollars, zero. It's all privately raised. And we've been around since '83. They hired me in '08 to really change the model. It used to be '07 and back, and it really was mostly really kind of well-organized, nice, beautiful live oaks in wealthy neighborhoods. And that was, although I say that, Trees for Houston was involved on Heights Boulevard out here with a bunch of kind of grassroots folks who've done such a fabulous job at the Heights. So they go way back, and they've done great things. And Trees for Houston has evolved. Today, organizationally, Trees for Houston is by order of magnitude by far the largest regional tree planting entity in North America. Nobody else even comes close. We've got Arbor Day Foundation and things like that that are national and international groups. But in terms of regional tree planting groups, there's nothing like Trees for Houston. And it's a testament to a couple things. One is the generosity and the philanthropic nature of Houston, but also the climate of Houston. Salubrious climate for trees. There's just nothing like it here. 30 to 40 inches of rain, flat as a pancake. You can grow trees like nobody's business here. And you see that here. But like anything, there's a flip side to that coin, and tree care is part of that. So, to my mind, we'll get right into the kind of the nuts and bolts of what I think is the platform on which we should already be moving along with urban forestry, right? And it's three-pronged. And the first is, where do you plant trees, right? You really have to think about where your trees are located in relation to infrastructure, in relation to other trees. Trees are what are called phototrophic, right? They grow towards the light. And if you have 3 trees all in a row, they're going to grow in crazy angles. And in 15 years, you're going to deal with that morphology, right? I will never forget, so CenterPoint, it's easy to pick on CenterPoint right now, sometimes for good reason. But they have a bunch of foresters that work for them, right? And they've had a long-standing program which we love called The Right Tree in the Right Place, right? And they spend a lot of money on it. We help them educate, and we think it's great. We grow trees together to try and get people to plant the right tree under their power lines. And I'll never forget going to a meeting, I don't know, 12 years ago maybe, at a CenterPoint service center. And I'm going in and I look and there's a bunch of guys out there planting live oaks underneath their power line. And I go in and I'm like, what's the deal? I'm like, oh yeah, isn't that great? We're getting trees out. I'm like, didn't anybody look up? Right? You planted oaks, center point, planted oaks underneath power lines. My point is not to bash Centerpoint, it's to point out that it's really easy to forget. You've got to consider your infrastructure and where you're planting. If you plant a tree that wants to be 40 feet under a 30-foot power line, you have guaranteed either that's going to break that line or it's going to come in conflict. You're going to get mad when Centerpoint cuts it. Something bad's going to happen. You created a headache and a financial burden for somebody, right? So where you plant is really significant. It's not just the sidewalk, it's not just the power line, it's the house and it's driveways. It's really significant. You also have to think about, you know, the size of the space. You know, can you get a healthy root ball? There's just a bunch of questions to ask. The good thing is, in this day and age, all of that is available on the internet. It's easy to get. None of this is a secret anymore, right? And if you can't find it, call me and I'll tell you. Okay? It's just easy to get. You don't have to pay a horticulturalist or a tree guy to tell you, should I plant this tree? You can give me your address or send me a picture and I can tell you in 30 seconds whether it's a good idea to plant that species or not with an overhead view on Google Earth of your house. Now, that being said, so I think I heard the figure, council member, that half of the trees were damaged. There are 36 million trees is the best estimate in Houston. So what's the math on that? 17, 18 million trees damaged or something? So every one of those trees is a little different. Right? If there are 36 million, and those estimates those are done by satellite imagery and heat mapping, right? Nobody counted 36 million trees, right? So that's a ballpark, right? That being said, let's say that figure is exactly accurate. If there are 36 million trees in Houston, there are 36 million different sets of circumstances that have to be considered on the tree care, placement, planting of that tree. Every one is different. So everything I say, this is a caveat, everything I say has an exception. There is nothing 100% or permanent in arboriculture, forestry, the nursery business. There's always exceptions. So make sure when you are making decisions about your trees, if it's pre-existing and you've got, you know, that light bulb sitting outside of the window, it's this height of a 4-story building, right? It probably weighs 30,000 pounds of wood and water, right? Have a professional look at it, right? Don't ever just assume that tree is okay. You've got to do your due diligence. You would never buy a house in this neighborhood and then never have an electrician or a plumber or a painter or a roofer, never have them come around over the course of a generation. But that tree's been here for a generation, and if that's on your house and you've never had an arborist look at it, you are a time bomb waiting to happen, and that's what we saw. Now, some species, and we'll get to this, some species are better than others. Some trees are just safer than others, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Safe planting tips. When you're planting in or around your house, I really recommend you dial 811. In some places, if you're in the right of way, it's code. You really have to be in. Theoretically, the infrastructure is so far below, unless you're spading in a tree, it's not going to be a problem if you're hand digging a little tree bowl. That being said, I put a spade in the ground and cut into wires that should not have been there, right? So call 811, right? The distances from structure are a topic of we'll call it friendly discussion amongst professionals, right? Depending on what your profession is, what your own risk aversion is, all kinds of factors, what species it is in particular, indicates the risk level from that tree's root ball or branches to whatever it is you're planting around. You get 10 arborists looking at a tree, you're going to get about 3 or 4 opinions every single time. It's subjective, right? And so, Google it, think about it. If when you get on, and these websites are all back up here, they are. So these websites, when you get on them, it's going to tell you, like you go to that Texas Forest Service website and you look in Shumard Red Oak, the size it's going to give you is the champion size. So if it says 70 feet with a 50-foot crown, that means somewhere there's a 70-foot Shumard with a 50-foot crown. They're not all going to get that big. So do a little bit of research, get a size range, think about what it is, read about its habits, but it's all easily available. Do your homework. Don't go down to the nursery and hope that that guy trying to sell you that tree for $300 is going to tell you, he's going to tell you everything he can to get that $300 tree out of his nursery space, right? So it's caveat emptor, just like it is when you're buying a car or buying a house or anything else. Do your due diligence. Planting a tree is a multi-generational investment, right? You need to think about it. What's it going to be like in 5 years, in 10 years, in 50 years, right? Planting a tree is an act that if you do it right, your grandkids will enjoy. So let's move on to tree care. Okay, one of the other legs of my stool on which we should be sitting with tree care, with tree maintenance is the care of it. Okay? Again, we plant these trees that we want them because we want them to be big. We want them to provide us with shade and all these tangential eco benefits, right? So when you do that, I always do the analogy of a car. You would never go out and spend $30, $40, $50, $70,000 on a new automobile and say, I'm never going to take it to a mechanic. And then if you didn't, you wouldn't be shocked somehow when the engine blew up, right? But people do that with their trees all the time. They move into a house or they plant a tree and they've got a big, beautiful tree there and it looks green and it does what trees do and they never have a professional look at it. And your lawn guy is not a tree professional, doesn't count. He or she, they may be really knowledgeable, but the odds are they are not. The odds are they have the same anecdotal experience that you and I do from when we raked up from when our dads told us to when we were kids, something like that. It is a very specific knowledge set. It's a professional knowledge set, and you should never follow the advice of somebody who doesn't have training and is not certified. There are really serious implications to having something that big next to your house. Have a professional look at it. Okay? If you do it regularly, the cost is just like your car. If you change the oil and keep it well maintained, you spend a few $100 a year and everything's fine. If you don't do that, you have a $7,000 event when your transmission blows. It's the exact same thing. Pay me now, pay me later, right? So take care of them. Always use a certified arborist. That doesn't guarantee you that that person that comes out is going to know everything about trees, but it is a minimum professional standard. In every state in the union, there's a basic set of questions that you have to know, and you also have to have a minimum of 3 years supervised experience in the field before they even allow you to take the test. So it's not the answer to everything, and they're not all created equal, just like any other profession. That being said, if they're certified, you know they've answered those minimum questions. And there are a lot of pieces of so-called conventional wisdom that I hear out there that are so wildly out of date and so wildly untrue that are not backed by data or science, that our grandparents believed that are just not the case anymore. And I still hear that stuff persist. And so be very careful about whom you go to have your trees taken care of. But you will save a lot of money by not waiting until your tree is 50 feet tall and then calling somebody out to do an emergency pruning, right? That's expensive. And when you have these trees close to your house and you let your branch get way out over it, if that tree was 40 feet away and you let that happen, well, now they can just kind of drop it down. Once it's out over your house, now they get a climber to go up. They've got to take it down in little pieces. What was a 4-hour job becomes a 2-day job. That's why it's a $3,000 job instead of a $500 job, right? So regular maintenance is key. So watering. Best time of day to water, it doesn't really matter. There are some species under some circumstances where that can, but for all intents and purposes, to the vast majority of people, it's irrelevant. You save a little bit of water by watering at night because your evaporative rates are lower. But by and large, it just doesn't matter when you water. Native species, by and large, not all of them, but most native species once established, unless we're going through a 10, 14-day drought period during the summer, you don't even need to water them anymore. Now, they'll grow faster if you water them. But if we go a full week and it's really hot in July, run your hose on it at about half speed for about 30 minutes once a week, and your tree will do just fine. It's why you select the appropriate species. There was a question about watering the trees more dependent. Not really. There are some circumstances when that can affect them. That is most evident when you take them from the nursery and plant them, because they've been in a pot and they've got a bubbler on it, and they get measured water 3 times a day for the first 2 years of your life. Then you throw them in this native soil and you're hand watering them. So they get a little bit of shock on that. But again, that's not too much to worry about. I would much rather water it a healthy amount rather than leave it to its own devices and get it well established, get a good healthy root zone quicker, and then it will be much more able to handle the vagaries of our climate sooner. So if you plant the right species, it's not going to matter. If you plant drought-hardy species, it's just irrelevant. So the maintenance, signs of an unhealthy tree. So this is a really important point. Oftentimes, the vast majority of us, we enjoy our trees passively, right? We just walk by them, they're just there, right? And we don't even think about it. And so by the time you notice something's wrong with them, there's a real problem, right? But yellowing of leaves, loss of leaves when it's not the autumn when they drop. And that being said, this November, I guarantee you I'll get at least 10 calls saying my tree's dead, and it's going to be an oak or a maple or something. It happens every year like clockwork. That being said, fungal growths, what we call conchs that are growing out of what should be healthy wood, just real obvious physical signs like that. If you have a problem with that, call me, call an arborist, we'll come look at it and get them to tell you what it is. If you can, establish a relationship with an ethical arborist. Arborists are just like, say, plumbers or mechanics or any other trade, and they tend to do most of their business replacing trees, fixing trees, whatever, and they're going to tend toward lead source solutions that they're comfortable with. So get in a relationship with them and get somebody you trust. More importantly, on the signs of sick trees is what you don't see. And we could take this group and we could walk a one square kind of a loop around the block here, and I'll bet you that I could spot 10 or 15 trees that have something wrong with them that nobody else here sees. It's a knowledge set, right? It's a collection. It's the training and a decade and a half of looking at trees every day. So one of the biggest problems I see is well, there's a bunch of leaves on my tree. It has to be healthy, right? It couldn't be further from the truth. It doesn't mean it's sick, obviously. But one thing trees do is when they have severe stressors, they often will totally deplete their carbohydrate reserves to flush out and give them more trees, more acorns, more fruit. I don't know how many of you have noticed after the drought, the last drought we had, or in the 2011 drought, we had what we call mass years. Call after call. I've never seen this happening. I have so many acorns. Why do I have all these acorns? It's a stressor response. So trees will do that when they're really stressed. They flush out, they photosynthesize more, and then they put out a whole crop of nuts or fruits or whatever it is. They're hormonally, chemically, physically, they think they're dying. So they flush out and they start reproducing, right? So there's people like, my tree's never been healthier, when in reality, 70% of the core of the tree is dead, or it's got some fungal infection, right? So, and there are physical signs that you probably just won't notice. So that's a very long-winded way of saying, if you have any doubts at all, get a professional. If you don't have any doubts at all, and you've got a giant tree in your front yard, let a professional look at it down there. Pay him a couple $100 every couple of years to look at your tree, right? There's never a guarantee. The healthiest tree in the world can fall tomorrow for no apparent reason, and the sickest tree can drag on for years and years. So what we're talking about is ameliorating risk, remediating risk. You can't eliminate it. but you can really remediate it by having a professional regularly look at your trees. If you regularly lightly prune them, it's another thing we see people do wrong. Oh, it's hurricane season, it's time to prune my trees. Absolutely not. Hurricane season is the worst time to prune your tree, right? You should need to be doing that in December and January, not in April, right? Not when hurricane season hits. You are 4 months too late, right? You've stressed your tree. Now, right when the hurricane hits and it's really, really hot and all that, your tree has less photosynthetic capacity, you've stressed it, you've done dramatic prunes on it, and a lot of these folks say, well, I want to leg my tree up so I can see through it. So now you've taken away 40 or 50% of the photosynthetic capacity of your tree, and it can't feed itself. So you have internal tissue loss that you can't see because you've over-pruned it, right? So never, ever let somebody prune more than 15% of the leaf-making capacity of your tree. It's a question on every single arborist exam given in the United States every year. So the next time somebody wants to leg it up and just have leaves on the end, move on to the next tree because they don't know what they're doing. That is, I can't overstate that enough. I see tree after tree after tree that is over-pruned, and it is highly contributive to their death or morbidity at least and mortality. And then branch failure during tree storms is inappropriate tree pruning. Now some of these guys, they know what they're doing, but the customer just wants it. We call it lion tailing on the tree because you prune everything up and then there's just this bunch of leaves on the end. It looks like a lion's tail on the end. And so again, getting a qualified professional to look at and prune your trees lightly every year will save you a lot of heartache. Later on.
So say I let my tree grow for quite a while and it needs to be pruned quite a bit. You're saying that I should take more than 15% of the canopy down. So how long do I have to wait in between prunings to get it where it needs to be?
It's a really good question. So if you let it go a really long time, sometimes you just, now, if it's a safety issue for your property or humans, do it anyways, right? So there's that. But so other than that though, depending on the species, if it's a live oak, you could do 2 of those per year, right? If it's a Shumard or a native red maple, do it over 2 to 3 years. A live oak you could get, or a bur oak, American sycamore, you could do 2 a year till you get to where you want it to do. But again, so in a lot of this pruning, when you plant your tree and say it's this big, the pruning to get the tree into a safe shape is you and a pair of pruners, right? You keep a nice straight trunk until there's no lateral branches about this big, and then you kind of let it do its thing, and then it's you and a pair of loppers for a few years. And it's really, if you educate yourself on Google, it can be 10 years before you need a professional to do it, right? To actually do the physical pruning. So early correct care will save you thousands of dollars later on. Now, a lot of people, they're not comfortable doing that. They don't want to do that. You just get somebody to do it for you. But it's dirt cheap. You know, you're talking about a $25 pruning added on to an assessment or something. It's 5 minutes worth of pruning. Now, once they're big, again, back to the car analogy, you know, if no mechanic has ever seen your car until it has 80,000 miles on it and nothing's working, that's going to be expensive, right? But yeah, unless it's a safety issue, don't do more than 15%. But some species you can do more than others. So I took, this is by no means comprehensive, but so these trees I'm mentioning are a combination of my opinion and my anecdotal experience and a survey of some of my colleagues here in Atlanta and in Phoenix. And I did an informal survey. I said, what do you recommend for wind tolerance, right? And this is what we came up with. But this is by no means comprehensive. It doesn't mean if you don't have one of these, it's going to fall over and it's a disaster. Although there are a few species that I will point out as we should not be planting around dwellings or infrastructure. But live oak, bald cypress, eastern red cedar, I don't plant many eastern red cedar. They are native, and they're really good for some things, but they are widely regarded as very, very wind tolerant. So I threw them on anyways because of where we're at. And then the Monterey Mexican, or Monterey Oak, or the Mexican White Oak, as council member mentioned, and I agree with this, you have to start thinking about a wider geographic area for what's native. The city of Houston is already 3 or 4 or 5 degrees warmer than it was 75 years ago, just because of concrete and steel, right? It's just the way it is. And then when you talk about a warming climate, you cannot, also the microbiology of the ground out here is totally different than it was 100 years ago. From the 1830s to now, the built environment, it really destroys the microbiology of the soil. And so it's all disturbed. You can't continue to throw in the same 10, 15, 20 species that you did in 1940 or in 1900 and expect them to work. They just don't. And we've seen it even in my 15, 20 years here. So Mexican White Oak and or the Monterey Oak, depending on where you're from, that's an example of what I would have 10 years ago called a near native. It's native to a few hours south or a few hours west of here, but it does really well here now. And it can take soils that many of our natives otherwise wouldn't take. So that's an example of that. And I know there's some purists who disagree with that, and their opinions are valid. I'm somewhere in between. I would rather have some trees that work that weren't necessarily here 100 years ago, as long as they're not invasive. We have the next slide. And live oaks, by the way, are as close to a bulletproof tree as we have. Their both tensional and torsional strength is really, really good. So some medium trees, some of these are familiar to you, some of them are not. American persimmon is a great, sturdy, medium-sized tree, relatively fast-growing, and if you don't want fruit, it is what's called the dioecious species. It is a male and a female tree, and if you don't have both of them, you cannot get fruit. So if you don't want the fruit around, that's easy. It's an easy get around with persimmons. But they're native, and they are very, very sturdy, and they grow easily in our soil. Southern magnolia, and I put these as medium trees. You know, there are some, heck, I think the champion American holly is probably 60 feet or something, but if you ever see one higher than 15 feet, it's unusual, right? Magnolias do really well. When left alone, magnolias tend to get really wide and not really tall. A lot of people hate them because they leave these giant leaves and whatnot, but they're a beautiful tree. They're evergreen. They make great windbreaks. American holly, another great native. Yeah.
Would these be a sufficient size to say be like a sidewalk shade tree, like when you say medium tree, it would grow above, sidewalk height and red shade?
Everything there, easily, yeah. Easily, yeah. Cedar elm, another really durable, both drought tolerant and pretty wind tolerant as well. And then San Carlos red oak is another one of those. We're calling it the San Carlos. It's new genetics. It's out of southern Mexico, southern Texas, northern Mexico. It doesn't even really have a common name yet. But it's a really hardy species. It's grown. We're planting it in places to test it. It's grown in just soil that, I can't believe where we're getting it to grow, and it's evergreen. So we really like that, and it seems to be a smallish to medium-sized tree. But we're testing it right now, so we can get the short ones. Mexican persimmon is an interesting one. Some people may know it as chipotle. It doesn't look like an American persimmon, either the fruit or the tree. The trunk of this looks like a crepe myrtle. You know how they kind of exfoliate? They're beautiful, and they rarely get above, I think mine are maybe 20 feet, and I've had them in the ground for, years now. They're typically 10 feet, right? And the fruit's delicious. Unlike an American persimmon, which are mildly palatable for about 12 hours, these fruit are really, really good. And they're really drought hardy, and anything in this size, it doesn't matter if it does fall off. over because it's 10 feet tall, right? It's not going to kill anybody. It's not going to wreck your house. Mexican plum, they do really well on our esplanades. They're really drought tolerant, wind tolerant. The critters love them. It's a great small tree. And then wax myrtle, they're beautiful. They're drought hardy. They're if you down by the southern edge of an urban area. They take salt spray. Beautiful white flowers. Pollinators love them. It's another great small. What I've shown you here today is 10% at the most of what I would recommend planting. This is just an idea to give you. I threw in some things that maybe you would not have thought of when you're considering some of the species that we consider. But there are dozens and dozens of things you can plant. And you can still plant the same old things that you've always planted. I just would advocate for you to think wisely about where you're planting. And then here's some websites. So there's Trees for Houston. You can always email us and we'll do our best to help you. That Texas tree planting at Texas A&M University is interesting. It's got an algorithm, and you put in your zip code, you put in what you want it to do. Do you want it to be wide? Do you want it to be tall? Do you want it to attract butterflies? And the algorithm will tell you, it'll give you 3, 5, 7 different species that you can plant based on your zip code. And then in terms of finding an arborist, at the Trees Are Good website, you can go in and type in your zip code there, or you can go directly. ISA Texas, ISA is an International Society of Arborists, and you can go in, and any arborist that wants to be found that is certified can turn that on the website, and you can find an ISA certified arborist. But then you don't even have to do that. You can call any local tree person and ask her or ask him, are you ISA certified? And they will say yes or no. And you don't have to do that. That's my strong recommendation because again, it's a minimum barrier to entry. So I think that was all the slides we had. Questions?
Yeah, so we've got a lot of great questions. I don't know if we have time for all of them, but I am gonna give a couple, and then for any questions that don't get answered tonight, as a reminder, please do reach out to Trees for Houston. You can contact them, go on their website, email them with any questions you have. Various teams really responsive. So just a couple of questions here. I've got one. The best type of tree for a smaller fenced-in space. They don't have power lines, but are curious about like a limited workspace and you don't have a lot of room to work with.
Yeah, so the species I had up there, wax myrtle, it depends on how tall. There are a number of myrtle species, but in addition to that, there are 5 or 6 I can think of. Whoever's question that is, email me, and I'll send you a list of 10 or 15 of the things. But it's really going to be dependent on your actual site. How much is it north facing? Is it west facing? What other things do you have in the yard? There's too many questions to answer that. So what I would do is I'll send you a list, and then you can cross-check that against what your yard is. So.
Great. So this one says, how can I maintain my tree's health and prepare it for an upcoming storm? So I know at the beginning we talked about that, but I guess in an immediate when the storm's coming.
So if your tree's already there, the most thing I can tell you is every fall have an arborist out and have a look at your tree, and then they pruned it, and then it's got plenty of time to recover from that pruning. It's nice and healthy. Any dead wood is gone. It's not over pruned, and just do that every year. If you have some trees, you can get away with it every couple years. It just depends. But the best single thing you can do is have a professional do light pruning every 12 to 24 months.
Awesome. Someone said, trees in flood zones, do sturdy trees in that slide still do well?
Repeat that.
So for trees in the flood zones, do those sturdy, larger trees in the slide still do well, or do you have recommendations for those in the flood zone?
Some do and some don't. Live oaks certainly do. Most of them will. Most of the trees I recommend will. The vast majority of trees we have here, and there are some significant exceptions that I never recommend around houses, are willow oak, water oak, and ash trees. They're all native, they're all big, they're beautiful, and they die young. Those are 30 to 50 year trees, right? If you have a big ash tree or a big willow oak in your yard, you have a tree that's a problem, I guarantee it. Right? So that being said, the Texas red oak and the bur oak and the live oaks, right? the architecture of those trees, people think trees go down like this, the root system. Around here, they don't. There are one, arguably two species maybe that have taproots in this region. It just doesn't exist here because of the clay and the high water table. So when you want to picture a tree, picture a wine glass. And trees have the canopy, which is where you hold your wine, and they have a stem, and then they have a broad base, and that's how they stay up here. That's how trees evolved here. And so it's why selecting a good root zone is so important. If you've got a tree that's that big, and it's got a root zone this big, it's only a matter of time before it falls over. Right? So that being said, back to the original question, those species tend to do well. There are some other species that will do well in flood zones as well. Cedar elm is a great one for cedar elms and live oaks. They do great in bottomland. Magnolias do okay as long as it dries out quickly. If it stays wet, magnolia they won't do well. But there are a number of species that will do well with periodic inundation. And I'm also happy to answer that question on email as well.
Awesome. Okay, everyone's going to do a couple more. One is you mentioned folks just trying to offload their trees. They may not know about the best type for a person's yard. So do you have any recommendations for where someone can buy a tree for their property or how to navigate the buying process?
Yes, so trees are expensive, okay? And so when you grow a tree, somebody has to take a seed and germinate. If you try and germinate 10,000 seeds, you're going to get about 8,000 seedlings. And each stage, you get a 10 to 20% loss, right? So you're 3 years in before you have something that big, right? And then you're 5 years in, depending on the species, 6, 7 years in before you have a marketable tree. So the dirty secret of the horticultural industry or the nursery industry is they don't want to sell you really healthy trees this big because they want to wait another year or two and double or triple the price. But at this size or so, that's as healthy as they're ever going to get. The cost curve on trees by size is vertical. At 5 gallon, for me buying it, that's about an $8 tree. The next size up, 15 gallon, that's an $80 tree. The next size after that, it's about $150 to $190 tree. Cost curve up. What they don't tell you is the morbidity and mortality curve after 15 gallon is also going up. It's not vertical, but it's going up as well. So after 15 gallon, you are buying trees at higher and higher rates that have higher and higher rates of failure, right? It's the dirty secret of the nursery business. So if I give away trees this big that are costing me 15 bucks, right? If I plant that tree for 15 bucks and I go out and I buy a $1,000 tree from T's Nursery or Moss Nursery and have them plant it, and it's already 15 to 20 feet high. In 5 years, nobody in this room could tell the difference. Because this tree is so out of proportion to its root zone in that bucket, and they're throwing crap on it to get it to shoot up and green up, and they're pruning it up. This tree is just this is the farmer's market apple, and this is the apple that was grown by an industrial grower to get 10 million of them to market at the same time, right? So it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with it, but be really careful about overbuying large trees. Unless money's going out to you, the smaller you can get your tree, the better it is, right? So,
Yeah. I think that's all the time that we have for questions. Just
I'm happy to stand aside and take any
Yeah,
questions. as well.
Absolutely. Barry will stay, but if we just give a hand for Barry. I did see one question about how we can get more trees planted in our public city parks. Email our office and we can help you with that inquiry. We can connect you with the Parks Department as they handle those inquiries. I know that they've been planting a lot more lately. So definitely reach out to our office. Our email is districtc@houstontx.gov. But before we wrap up, I know the unfortunate council member had to run on an urgent matter. So again, hi, I'm Anna. I'm with Councilmember Tankman's office. But I just wanted to pass it over to Emmanuel, who had a quick announcement about a tree project that you are working on. So I'm happy to give the floor with you for a minute or two.
You guys can pull it up on the.
Oh, yeah, sure.
It's just the internet.
Oh, just the internet, okay. I can do that.
Hi, everybody. My name is Emmanuel Nunez, and I want to talk to you guys about a project that we're working on. We just got it permitted by the city to plant 200 trees along the Heights Hike and Bike Trail between Yale and Shepherd. So I'll show you here in a second. The planting is going to take place on January 25th. So you can go. So you can go on the website atotb.org /shade. And shade is the name of the project because we're bringing shade to the trail. And you can go in here. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, you'll be able to sign up to volunteer for this. And you'll get regular emails as we start approaching the day. Trees for Houston we're actually partnering with Trees for Houston to do this, as well as Livelihood. Trees for Houston has also helped us with other plantings in the Heights as well. So yeah, we're looking forward to this, and we're looking forward to doing this with the support of all of you, with the support of the council member's office, and yeah, please sign up to volunteer, sign up to get more updates and learn more about our organization. So thank you.
Awesome. So just wanted to say thank you all so much for coming. Wanted to give a huge shout out again to the Heights Fire Station, the Heights Association for letting us use the space. To all of our civic clubs and super neighborhoods that partnered on this, thank you. Barry will be sticking around for a few minutes to answer any questions. If any questions didn't get answered, I encourage you to ask them or email them. But we're having one more of these in the South, so if you're interested in trees in the South, you can join us on Tuesday, August 20th, this coming Tuesday at the JCC at 6 o'clock. But thank you all so much. That's it for the presentation, and yeah, thank you.